Welcome to the comfy zone. Make yourself at home.
I had been counting down the days until I could finally go to the amusement park. It had been years since I'd been on a roller coaster, and I was eager to feel the rush of adrenaline that comes with hurtling through the air at breakneck speeds. I had arranged to go to the park with my friend Alex. We were both thrill seekers and had been planning our trip for weeks. As we pulled into the parking lot, Alex turned to me and said, "I heard they just opened a new ride here. It's supposed to be the scariest one in the park." My heart skipped a beat at the thought of it. "What's it called?" I asked. "It's called the Blackout," Alex replied. "I don't know much about it, but I heard it's so scary that people are passing out on the ride." I felt a thrill of fear run through me at the thought of it. Could a ride really be that scary? I was about to find out. As we got in line for the ride, we could hear people murmuring nervously about it. "I hear the ride is cursed," one person whispered. "They say it's haunted by the ghost of a park employee who died while working on it," another said. Despite the rumors, Alex and I were undeterred. We had come to the park for the thrill of the rides, and we were determined to try out this new one. Finally, it was our turn to get on the coaster. As we strapped ourselves into the seats, I couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. What if the rumors were true? What if something terrible happened on this ride? But before I could voice my fears, the coaster started to move. We were plunged into darkness, with only occasional flashes of light to illuminate the way. As we hurtled through the darkness, I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. And then, just as suddenly as it had started, the ride was over. I looked at Alex, surprised. "What? Are you serious? That ride was terrifying," I said. "I know, but didn't you feel it? There was something strange happening on that ride," Alex replied. I hesitated for a moment, but then curiosity got the best of me. "Okay, let's go on it again, but this time we need to pay attention to everything that's happening." As we got back in line for the ride, I couldn't shake the feeling of unease that had settled in my stomach. The people around us were still whispering about the ride, but this time their voices were hushed and fearful. When it was our turn to get on the coaster, we both felt a sense of dread as we strapped ourselves in. The ride began smoothly enough, but as we plunged into the darkness, things started to feel off. The flashes of light were few and far between, and when they did come, they revealed unsettling images. I saw ghostly figures lurking in the corners of the tunnel, their eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. I heard eerie whispers in my ear, and felt cold fingers brushing against my skin. Alex and I clung to each other in terror as we hurtled through the darkness, unable to make sense of the supernatural phenomena happening around us. And then, just as suddenly as it had started, the ride was over. We stumbled off the coaster, feeling shaken and unnerved. "That was even worse than the first time," Alex said, his voice shaking. As we walked away from the ride, Alex turned to me with a strange look in his eyes. "Hey, let's go on that ride again," he said. I felt a chill run down my spine. "What? Are you crazy?" I asked. "I don't know, man. I just feel like there's something we missed. Something important," Alex replied. Despite my misgivings, I found myself nodding in agreement. There was a strange compulsion pulling us back to that ride, and I couldn't explain why. We got back in line, our hearts pounding with anticipation and fear. As we strapped ourselves in, I felt a sense of dread wash over me. What was going to happen this time? The ride started as before, but this time there were no flashes of light. We were plunged into total darkness, and the ride seemed to go on forever. As we hurtled through the darkness, I began to feel a strange sensation, like something was pulling at my soul. I heard eerie whispers in my ear, and saw ghostly apparitions floating in front of me. And then I felt it. A cold, clammy hand reached out of the darkness and brushed against my face. I screamed and tried to pull away, but the hand had a grip on me, pulling me closer and closer. Finally, the ride ended, and I stumbled off, gasping for air. Alex was there to help me, his own face pale with fear. "What was that? What just happened?" I asked, trying to catch my breath. Despite our fear and misgivings, Alex and I found ourselves getting back in line for the ride. We didn't understand why we were doing it, but we couldn't seem to help ourselves. As we strapped ourselves in for the third time, a sense of dread settled over me. I didn't know what was going to happen, but I knew it wasn't going to be good. The ride started as before, but this time it was different. The darkness was deeper, the whispers louder, and the ghostly apparitions more terrifying. As we hurtled through the darkness, I felt something cold and slimy brush against my face. I screamed, trying to get away, but there was no escape. The hand had me in its grip, pulling me closer and closer. And then I saw it. A creature made of shadow and mist, with glowing red eyes and jagged teeth. It reached out to me with its twisted claws, and I felt my mind start to unravel. I don't remember much after that. The ride ended, and Alex and I stumbled off, dazed and confused. We made our way out of the park, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something had followed us. As we drove away, I turned to Alex. "What was that?" I asked, my voice shaking. "I don't know, man, but I think we need to find out. We can't just leave it like this," Alex replied. I nodded, feeling a sense of dread settle over me. What had we gotten ourselves into? And how were we going to get out? Despite the terror we experienced on the ride, Alex and I found ourselves drawn back to it again and again. It was like a compulsion that we couldn't resist, no matter how hard we tried. Each time we rode the attraction, the things we encountered became more detailed and disturbing. We saw shadowy figures moving in the darkness, heard blood-curdling screams, and felt like something was watching us. Always watching. On the fifth ride, we found ourselves transported to a dark and twisted forest, with gnarled trees and a moonless sky. Strange creatures lurked in the shadows, their eyes glowing with malevolence. We saw a group of hooded figures gathered around a ritualistic altar, chanting in an ancient tongue. As we approached, they turned to us, their eyes filled with hatred. And then we saw it, the creature that had been following us. It was a towering behemoth, with razor-sharp claws and a mouth full of jagged teeth. It reached out to us, and we felt our minds being pulled apart piece by piece. The ride ended, and we stumbled off, our bodies shaking with fear and exhaustion. We collapsed onto the ground, gasping for air. "What is happening to us?" I asked, my voice trembling. "I don't know, man, but we can't stop now. We have to keep going. Keep riding. There's something we need to find out," Alex replied, his own voice quivering. And so we rode the attraction again and again, our bodies and minds pushed to their limits. The things we saw were beyond comprehension, beyond sanity, but we couldn't stop. We were trapped in a nightmare, and there seemed to be no escape. On the 10th ride, we found ourselves plunged into a world of total darkness. We couldn't see anything around us, but we could feel a palpable sense of malevolence in the air. As we rode deeper into the darkness, we heard whispers and moans all around us. We could feel the hot breath of something breathing down our necks, and the touch of cold fingers on our skin. And then we saw it. A figure emerged from the darkness, its features distorted and twisted beyond recognition. It reached out to us, and we felt its icy grip closing in around us. We tried to scream, to fight back, but we were powerless against the darkness. It enveloped us, suffocating us, until we felt like we were drowning in a sea of nightmares. Finally, the ride ended, and we stumbled off, our bodies shaking with fear and exhaustion. We were barely able to stand, our minds reeling from the horrors we had just experienced. "We have to stop this, Alex. We can't keep going like this," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. But Alex just shook his head. "No, we have to keep going. We're so close, I can feel it," he said, his voice filled with a strange determination. And so we rode the attraction again and again, each time delving deeper into the abyss. We encountered creatures beyond imagination, saw sights that no human eyes should ever witness. And then, on the 20th ride, something changed. As we hurtled through the darkness, we saw a glimmer of light ahead, a beacon of hope in the endless nightmare. We rode towards it, our hearts pounding with anticipation. And then, suddenly, we were free. We burst out of the darkness and into the light, our bodies bathed in warmth and safety. We stumbled off the ride, tears streaming down our faces, and collapsed onto the ground. We had survived the nightmare, but at what cost? We would never be the same again. As we lay there, gasping for breath, I couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. Alex was grinning from ear to ear, his eyes sparkling with excitement. "Can you believe it?" he said, his voice filled with wonder. "That was incredible. We have to do it again." I hesitated. After everything we had just been through, how could he possibly want to go back on the ride? And yet, I could see the look of longing in his eyes, the hunger for more. We got up and stumbled towards the entrance, our legs shaky and weak. As we waited in line for the ride, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Alex seemed different somehow, more eager, more restless. I tried to talk to him about it, but he just brushed me off. "Come on, man, don't be such a buzzkill. We're on the verge of something amazing here." And then we were on the ride again, hurtling towards the darkness, but this time something was different. The creatures we encountered were more vicious, more savage. The air was filled with the stench of blood and decay. And Alex, he seemed to be enjoying it. His eyes gleamed with excitement, his laughter echoing through the darkness. I felt a chill run down my spine. This wasn't right. Something was wrong with Alex. Something was wrong with the ride, but I couldn't stop it. We rode the attraction again and again, each time sinking deeper into the nightmare. And with every ride, Alex seemed to change more and more, his laughter becoming more maniacal, his eyes more wild. I knew I had to stop this, to find a way to break free from the cycle. But how? The ride had a hold on us, and it wasn't letting go. We were trapped in its clutches, our minds and bodies slowly being consumed by the darkness. And then, on the 32nd ride, I saw something that made my blood run cold. Something that made me realize with a sickening certainty that we were never getting out of here alive. As we reached the peak of the ride for the 33rd time, I heard Alex's voice in my ears, his words filled with an unnerving enthusiasm. "Can you feel it? The power of this ride is amazing!" I was now more terrified than ever before. This was not the Alex I knew. This was someone else, someone consumed by the darkness. The ride descended, and we plunged deeper into the abyss. The horrors we encountered were beyond anything I could have imagined. The twisted creatures that leapt out of the darkness were more grotesque, more terrifying than ever before. And then something strange happened. As we hurtled towards a particularly gruesome creature, Alex began to chant something under his breath. At first I couldn't make out the words, but then they became clearer. "The darkness consumes us. The ride is our salvation. We are one with the horror." I tried to scream, but no sound came out. The ride was now a blur of colors and shapes, the darkness closing in on us from all sides. I felt like I was suffocating. And then, as suddenly as it had begun, the ride ended. Alex stepped off the ride, grinning from ear to ear. "Wow, that was amazing," he said, his voice filled with wonder. "We have to do it again." I stumbled off the ride, my legs weak and unsteady. I knew then that there was no way out. Alex had become a slave to the ride, and I was trapped in this nightmare with him. As we got back in line for the 34th time, I knew that the horrors we were about to encounter would be beyond anything we had seen before. And yet, I couldn't help but feel a sickening sense of excitement. The ride had consumed me too. We got back on the ride, and the horrors were even worse than before. The twisted creatures seemed to be reaching out for us, trying to drag us into the darkness. But now I was no longer afraid. I was consumed by the ride, just like Alex. With each subsequent ride, I felt myself slipping deeper and deeper into the darkness. The horrors became more intense, the creatures more grotesque, but I couldn't get enough. I needed the ride, like an addict needs their drug. As we reached the peak of the ride for the 40th time, I could feel the darkness closing in around me. It was like a physical weight, crushing down on me from all sides, but I didn't care. I was lost in the thrill of the ride, in the rush of adrenaline and fear. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the ride ended. We stepped off, and Alex turned to me, his eyes filled with a strange intensity. "We have to do it again," he said. "We have to keep going. We can't stop now." I nodded, feeling a strange sense of relief. I knew then that there was no turning back. The ride had consumed me too, and I was lost in the darkness just like Alex. We got back in line, ready to face the horrors once again. As we rode the roller coaster for the umpteenth time, something strange began to happen. The twisted creatures were even more grotesque than before, and the ride was faster and more intense than ever. I felt my grip on reality slipping away as we hurtled through the darkness. And then, in the middle of the ride, something went wrong. The car jolted to a stop, and I was thrown from my seat. For a moment, I thought I was gonna die. I could hear the wind rushing past me as I fell, and I closed my eyes, ready for the impact. But then, everything went black. When I opened my eyes again, I was somewhere else entirely. I was lying on the ground, surrounded by people. They were all staring at me with worried expressions. "Are you okay?" someone asked. I sat up, feeling dizzy and disoriented. "What happened?" I asked. "You fell off the roller coaster," the person said. "But don't worry, you're okay. You're safe now." But I wasn't safe. Alex was nowhere to be found. I searched the park for hours, but nobody seemed to know who he was. His family had never heard of him, and there was no record of him ever being at the park. It was like he had never existed. As I wandered the park, searching for some clue as to what had happened to Alex, I began to realize that something was very wrong. The people around me all seemed strange, like they were hiding something. And as I looked around, I saw things that shouldn't have been there. Strange shadows moved in the corners of my vision, and I heard whispers in my ear. I realized then that the ride had taken me somewhere else entirely, somewhere beyond the boundaries of reality, and I wasn't sure if I would ever be able to escape.